Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Ogachukwu Olebu, as Sumaya has introduced earlier. GPST1 trainee. I'm currently doing my rotation in Obs and Gynae, and I'm in the West Midlands Deanery. Okay, so I'll be taking us all on general practice training and overview, how to get into it, the requirements, what you should do, what the entry exam is about, and what is expected of you. All right. At the end of the day, we're going to take some questions. Smaya is going to harness the questions. Okay. All right. So outline of the discussion for this evening is going to go through this introduction, how to get into the GP/application process, the MSRA exam, which means the multi-specialty recruitment assessment exam, what the training scheme is like, and what life as a GP trainee is about. I'm sure everyone will want to have an idea of what they will be getting into if they eventually decide to go with the GP training. Okay. So GP info means general practice, okay? And I think like it's general practice in the UK and some other countries. It's synonymous to family medicine, which I feel Australia, New Zealand, and Nigeria uses basically the same scope of coverage. And for you to be called a general practitioner, you must have had your postgraduate training in general practice. So you must have done your general practice training. Why I'm explaining this is because I know in some countries, after you're done with your basic medical degree and you don't want to go into training, you can be practicing and you're called the GP. Is not necessarily the same thing. You must have your postgraduate training, which in the UK is a 3-year training period. So general practice is basically first contact medicine. Really, you are the portal, you are the gateway into the healthcare system. That the primary care, the general practitioners are the primary care level, okay? There are lots of definitions out there, but the thing is that the key ones tend to capture the fact that general practitioners are at the front line of care. They are trained, they take the initial steps in trying to deal with the patient's health problem, which they could solve. If they're unable to solve, they can go onwards to refer, all right? They request investigations. They are always in constant contact with your patients, okay? The difference is that between us and other specialties, that even when you refer patients out, at the end of the day, they still come back to you. So you are like at the center managing all their health needs. And we also have like some palliative roles to what we do, and also health promotion, health prevention is really, really a wide scope. So there are varied definitions, but all of them tend to incorporate these key points. Okay, so the next slide. So getting into the GP training. Well, at this point, I know most of you will be thinking, I don't which training to go into depending on what you prefer, depending on what your previous experience is. So for those that are considering to go into GP training, or for those that have made up their mind to go into GP training, there are like basic requirements. The first thing is the medical degree, which I feel is the foundation for any specialty you want to go into, okay? Then there's another thing you need to have, which is called the CREST form. This means Certificate of Readiness to Enter Specialty Training. It's basically what shows that you've had postgraduate experience. That is, after you're done with your MBBS, you've worked for about 2 years, okay? For UK graduates, it entails both Foundation Year 1 and Foundation Year 2. So for them, they tend to sign off competencies. But for the IMGs, that's immigrants coming from other countries, it means any experience you've had abroad, but it should be a minimum of 2 years. So in this form, there's a consultant, a named consultant should fill out the form, and you should have been known to work with the consultant for about 3 months, all right? It mustn't be the whole of the 2 years, but you should have worked under the consultant for 3 months, then at least experience in the preceding 2 years or 3 years, whichever one that comes first. Then another thing is GMC registration. I put plus or minus because at the time of application into GP training for you to sit for the exams, you mustn't necessarily have your GMC registration, because some people say, oh no, I must have my GMC registration before I can apply. No, that's not true. But one thing is that at the time, let's say you write the exams, you write and you're successful, you get a placement. At the point of resumption, you are expected to have been fully registered with the General Medical Council. So it doesn't really matter when you're applying, but you should have in mind, or you should know that by the time you're starting, you should have been fully registered with the GMC. Then another thing is your driver's license, that's driving license. As GPs, we do our roles. The roles of GP is quite varied. What we do, we go on home visits. We don't only practice in GP surgeries. For people that are unable to come to the surgeries, we pay them home visits. Okay, so at this point, you should be able to commute yourself. So that's why it's a requirement. If you don't have a driving license, there should be a way for you to take care of your transportation if needed. So at the point, it's plus or minus, because at the point of application is not a must that you should have it. You mustn't necessarily have it even by the time you're getting into training, but ensure that if you don't have your driver's license, you should have a means of commute. Like when I started my own training, I had a provisional license. I didn't have a full license. It was in the course of training that I got my full license. So, but when I did my GP surgery rotation and I had a need to go for home visits, I had to take care of my transportation. So that's like the basic requirements, okay, for you to go ahead with the application process. Then the next thing is the application itself. Before you talk about application, you should have an Oriel account. All right. So Sumaya spoke last week. She took you guys through the process of creating an Oriel account, how the Oriel interface looks like, and what you should be doing. So before then, before the portals open or before the advert opens, you should have an Oriel account, because this is where you make your application. Is an online recruitment portal. It's not only used for general practice, other specialties use it, okay? So then once you have that, there's what's called the GPNRO site. That's the General Practice National Recruitment Office. They are the ones in charge of GP recruitment. So this is where the advert comes in. It tells you, okay, so dates, there'll be opening of adverts. It's going to close so dates, see the date of your exam. Usually for the recruitment periods, we have like 2 periods. You have the round 1 and the round 2. The round 1 period is usually the August of each year, which is August is the resumption date. It's not actually the date that you do your application. So let's say you're supposed to be resuming August 2022, all right? The advert for this period usually comes up around November, December. Okay, it closes December, it comes around November. That's when the advert comes out. You do the application on there, do your ranking, then you submit. Then the next thing that they start talking about is the exam. Dates are allocated. I'll tell you, okay, when you're going to write your exam, it's usually January, maybe from 2nd week of January to the 4th week of January. So that's when the exam holds. So when you're done with the exam, after at least a minimum of a month, the result gets released with your scores and your band and your ranking. All these happen on Oriel. So that's why an Oriel account is very, very important. So once your score and your ranking and banding is released, the next thing you're waiting for is to see, offers start coming out. So Maya had talked about ranking. Usually ranking, you have 2 openings for ranking. First is when you're applying. You rank where places you would like to go to, then it closes close to the time you're about to submit the form. Then after that, after you're done writing the exams and all, it opens again before the release of the scores and your rank. So for you to go through your ranking and be sure that places that you have on your list, at least the first 10 places or the first 20 places are places that you really want to go to, you must have done your research about the areas, cost of living, support and stuff like that. Okay, so that's when you've done that and you've closed it, by the time they're releasing your scores, your rank, and by the time you are being paired or you are being placed, depending on your score, you are either getting maybe your first 10 ranked places, or if you really scored high, you could get your first place of choice. So that's about it. I know in some situations like this year, sometimes they have, was it last year, they have like re-adverts. Okay, how it works is round one is the major recruitment period. For GP, we have up to 4,000 plus slots or spaces. Okay, so you have higher chance of getting where you want to go to. Okay, you have it's still competitive, but not as competitive as round two. All right, for round two is now the remnant of slots, that's slots that are not occupied in round one. Those are the slots that are now available for people to compete for in round two. So let's say round one, you're having a 4,000 plus slots. In round two, you could have like 400 to 600 slots. So there's limited choice. So you might not really get your first place of preference. It might not even be on the list. So usually it's better, it's usually advised if you want to do round one, give it your best, okay? So let's say after round two, they still have some slots that have not been occupied, all right? So you can now have a re-advert. So they will still start February, but the advert comes in between the time, like almost as the advert for the round one is closing, it comes out and they're writing their exam between March and April. That's if they want to join the next round, okay? I don't know whether it makes any sense. If you have any question, you can type it in the box and Sumaya will pop it up. It's a bit, when you're at that process, you'll be able to figure it out. It's a bit, how will I say, confusing, because for round one, you are starting 2022, let's say August 2022, then round two, you are starting February 2023. So that's it for the recruitment periods. So the next thing is the exam. Like I mentioned before, is a multi-specialty recruitment assessment exam. Is a computer-based exam. For the longest of time, I kept on calling it MRSA. Is when I'm done saying that and I remember, oh no, it's the other way, because I mean, they sound alike, they have similar letters. So it's a computer-based exam and is written by different specialties. It's not only GP. Doctors interested in going into radiology training, psychiatry, obs and gynae, GP, and other specialties write this. So just that after the MSRA, I think the recruitment system now varies. For other people, I think they go to do the stage 3, which is the interview. But since COVID, for GP, we've not been doing any interviews, so there's no stage 3. So your one and only shot of getting into training is by writing this exam and by giving it your all and scoring as high as possible to get your place of choice. So MSRA is comprised of 2 papers, basically, the situational judgment test and the clinical case scenarios. Both of them have equal weights. There's no, situational judgment weighs heavier than clinical test. No, they all carry the same weight, 50%, 50%, and you must pass both of them. All right. So the situational judgment test is, it comprises about 50 questions, and you do it under 95 minutes. So here, time is usually an issue, and for immigrants, it's a bit difficult because our training doesn't go through this, like how UK graduates in their foundation year tend to take, or even in their undergrad year, do some situational judgments, test clinical scenarios. We don't do it. All right. The clinical knowledge is universal. Just read up, brush up, the question is the same thing. But the situational judgment is a bit tricky because it's not what we are used to. So I would encourage when you will apply and when you are preparing for the exams, you also pay attention to this, if possible more, because it tests your knowledge on medical ethics, okay, professional dilemmas, how you reason, how you go through professional dilemmas, okay? There are usually, sometimes there's a ranking section of it. There's like, what's it called? Sequence of action. Sorry, there's a sequence of action. So this, I would encourage you practice and practice over and over again to get used to the mode of reasoning and the thought process behind all these things, okay? And this is where some GMC, some publications on the GMC websites comes into play. So when you're done writing your exams and you've put in your best, okay, here people usually ask how long was the ideal number of months or number of weeks to prepare. I believe it's personal, but it's recommended at least 3 to 4 months of intensive reading. For me, I read basically intensively for 3 months, but I was reading passively for like 2 months because I had some discussion groups I was part of. They were answering questions. So some days I join in, some days I don't join in. Okay, but the intensive preparation for this exam for me was 3 months. Some people say 3 months, some people say 4 months. You can even do it under a month. It depends on the score you want to get and where you want to go to. So it's a personal choice. But if you want to get a really high score, because like I said, it's competitive, it's not necessarily a pass or fail exam. It's based on the ranking system. Okay, if you get 400 and let's say you want to go to a place like London, which is really competitive, and someone gets like 618, definitely the person that scored 618 will get the place before you. All right. And the thing is that a mark can make a huge difference. So that's it. So scoring and ranking system for GP, the MSRA is divided because you have 2 sections, SJT and clinical, okay? They are scored between band 1 to band 4 for each paper. Then for you to actually be considered recruitable, you should have a minimum of band 2 in each paper. So if you have anything band 2, band 1, you're not getting any placement in that round. So before you are considered recruitable, band 2, then the option of how many people scored above you, how many people want the same practice or the same location as you will now come into place, okay? So this is a table that summarized what the different bands, sorry about that spelling error, what the different bands mean and what the score range is like. In each band, like in band 1, there's a further breakdown, maybe like a percentage, maybe 0 to 79, it's on the websites there. Then also in band 2, there's a further breakdown. Okay, so which means that you may have band 2 with someone, but the person will get a slot that you wanted and you will not get it. It only means that the person had a higher band 2 score. So that's what I mean by saying that even 1 mark makes a whole lot of difference. So you have to really read and be prepared for it. So 0 to 180 falls into band 1. 181 to 230 falls into band 2, which is the pass. Then 231 to 290 falls into band 3. 2 and 3 are further divided into 3 subsections. Then 291 and above is band 4. Okay. So resources. Then there's another thing I need to mention under the scoring and ranking, okay? Because based on your score, all right, you will get where you want to. You've done your ranking before. And I want to reiterate that ensure that wherever you are ranking, at least the first 10 places that you are ranking are places that you really want to go to. All right? So that if you get it, you're sure you're going to those places. Then there's a place that there are areas, that's the areas that they found it's been difficult to recruit people to. it's been difficult to recruit people to. So there's this incentive the government gives, which is called TERS, okay? TERS means Targeted Enhanced Recruitment Scheme. It's where they give extra pay to recruit doctors into those areas that doctors do not naturally like applying to. Most of the places are like remote areas. So I know it's about 20,000 £20,000, but after taxation, what you have in your pocket is 11,000. So that's another thing. Some people will want to go to those areas because of the extra cash. So those areas are also competitive. Nobody knows really which area will be, nobody knows which area is under TERS until the application comes out on Oriel and you see the areas available. You will now know, okay, this is a TERS area, this is a TERS area, then you rank it accordingly based on your preference. So resources, there are lots of resources out there for you to use and prepare for your MSRA. We have the online materials that you subscribe to that have questions. There are question banks. Okay, the first one is Past Medicine, there's eMedica, there's Past TERS, there's Aurora. Okay, then you also have the free ones that you might not necessarily pay for, sample questions from HEE, and stuffs like that. When you go online, you can find them. Okay, but I think the first four you have to subscribe and pay. There's a 3-monthly subscription and the 6-monthly subscription, so you pay. For me, I use them Past Medicine because I liked the explanation a lot. So before, like when I had ample time, I was using it to prepare. When you fail a question or after each question, they give like detailed explanations. They also give links, okay, to some YouTube videos or some papers on links on the topic in question, the topic of interest, so that you can read further, build more knowledge on that subject matter. So you are expanding your knowledge base, okay? So that's what I used at the beginning. Then towards the exam, like a month of the exam, I did my eMedica because it's a bit of a summarized question. And at that point, I felt it was similar to MSRA. But I mean, nobody can say anybody has monopoly to how the questions appear. And some sets will go and be like, oh, the question were like Past Medicine. And some will say, oh, the questions were like eMedica. So there's no really a particular frame. So it's just for you to read, expand your knowledge base, and be ready for whichever format the exam comes with. The only thing is that for Past Medicine questions, it's like a story. So you should be able to read very fast and answer the question within the time allocated. All right. They all have both the situational judgment tests questions and the clinical knowledge questions. Okay, then also they also have times. So when you're done reading, when it's close to the exam, like I would suggest like 6 weeks or a month to the exam, you can start timing yourself. So you select questions and time yourself. It helps you pace yourself. You will know what your speed is like. You will know, okay, how to prepare and the areas you need to work on. All right. So that's it basically. And they have like Past Medicine has areas that you can star or bookmark. You can always reference to and notes. So some people have attended some programs that have been organized by some doctors that do training for people interested in GP. Okay, like we have the Rahman, that's the owner of eMedica. I know he's organized some courses in the past and people have attended it and felt it was useful. So everybody does whichever they feel is best for their situation. So other things you have like reference that you need. Okay, there's also one examination that's from BMJ, but you have to have a BMJ subscription to access that. Then there's the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine. So when you want to read more on the subject matter, because I would advise, let's say when you're using the question banks and you get to questions that you fail or you don't have much knowledge on, it's better for you to go back and read. So Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine, it's good because it's concise and also gives you reasonable explanations that you need for the exam. Then you have Oxford Handbook of Clinical Specialties. MSRA tests you on all specialties of medicine, okay, ophthalmology, dermatology, radiology, general surgery, urology. So For those areas, you can use the Handbook of Clinical Specialties, or you can, if you have time, you can also use the Oxford Handbook that is specific for whichever specialty that you're reading at that point. Okay. Then also, there's also Oxford Access and Progress Situational Judgment Test. This is for the SJT. Then also the foundation year. On the foundation year program site, they also have some sample questions on SJT. I keep on emphasizing on SJT because I noticed that as immigrants, that is the part that gives us the most stress. So practice and practice all over again. Then what else? I would also suggest if when studying, you can do it system by system, like when you, or specialty by specialty rather, like when you log into Past Medicine or eMedica, is classified maybe on cardiovascular, okay, endocrinology, women health, child health, psychiatry. Instead of just answering random questions, I would suggest do it specialty by specialty. That's at the onset of preparation, because it helps you consolidate knowledge, because some questions keeps on coming over and over and over again, and you consolidate your knowledge on that subject matter. Then later you can just do the whole question bank thing, which comes with a mix of questions, and see how well you remember. That's it about resources. Okay, so I believe at this point you've written the exams, you've been placed, and you've gotten your place of choice. But before that, before you even start and you were thinking of GP training, why? Why do you want to go to GP training? Is it because that's where everybody that's coming from overseas go to? Because I noticed lots of IMGs going to GP training. Is it more like a mass effect? You're doing what your predecessors did, or what your friend that migrated to the UK did? Or is it because that's what you want to do? There are varied reasons, but these are the common reasons why some people choose general practice. Patient-centered care. I mean, medicine is all about patient-centered care, okay? But you practice, you read, you eat, you drink, you sleep patients in GP. Everything you do is about your patients. You're trying to sort out your paperwork. You're trying to do the adequate referral. You're trying to do their refills, the drug prescription. They are coming in with problems that you need to fix, health problems, psychological problems, even sometimes social problems, because it's a holistic kind of care. As in, you cannot imagine some of the things that you have to deal as a GP, as a GP or as a GP trainee. So it's the totality of the human. You refer to the hospital, the specialist directs his letter back to you. Sometimes you implement the plan, you do follow-up. So everything about GP practice is the patient. So it's wholly a patient-centered care. Then some people choose it because of the varied clinical presentations. People like me, okay, I get bored easily. So that was part of the things I considered. So you have a wide range of clinical presentations. You are seeing people from different age group. That's from the infant to the adult to the elderly person, everybody. Okay, so today you're seeing obs and gynae case, tomorrow you're seeing a pediatric case. So you're always thinking, is always tasking you to think and come up with good plan. Then also it's versatile that in GP you have different career options. You can work as with time you get to understand what all these things mean. Out of our GPs that work out of hour, so you're not doing the usual 9 to 5. You do like the odd shifts from 5 till 8 or during the weekends. You have the urgent care center GP. They work in that's the working centers. They have the portfolio GPs. These are the ones that, aside practicing as a GP, they do other things. They can be into IT, they can be into aesthetics, anything, name it. So they have other things that are interested in together with their GP. Okay. You have a question, Subaya? How many minutes do I have?
Just to let you know, you got a couple more minutes to go.
Up to. Okay, I think this is about the last. Then there's the locum GP, then there's the academic GP. That's those that teach in medical schools. And there's the GP with special interests. Along the line, some of us develop interest, maybe dermatology, then there's the salary GP that works in the GP practice, and there's the GP partner. You own a GP surgery, you run it. So aside taking care of patients, you have the admin work. So these are other good, perceived good work-life balance. I use the word perceived because that's why most people come into GP, because you don't do night shifts, you don't work on the weekends. But when you are in a GP surgery, most of the time you tend to run late a lot because you're trying to sort out your case. You're trying to sort out your case. Sorry about that. You're trying to sort out your patients, do some last minute paperwork. So at the end of the day, you may see yourself working like extra 1 hour, and is even worse when you were a GP partner, or you've qualified as a GP, because as a trainee, you are protected. So, and then other things, you have the short training period, which is the commonest reasons most people go into it, because it's just 3 years, and it makes for easy migration. Those that want to go to Canada, Australia, it's easy. So that's it. Life as a GP trainee is a run-through program, 3-year, ST1 to 3. You have 3 compulsory hospital rotations. Now it's 4 months. Then you have a 2-year GP rotation. Currently, they try to make you do a GP rotation in your first year, so you have an idea. Then during your training, you have to fill in your e-portfolio. It's a track of your progress. Okay, you have some assessments and also some colleague-based assessments. Then there are exams. Kobe, go. Yeah. No, Kobe, go to mommy. There are some exams that you need to write, AKT and your RCA. So you have to complete all these things before, at the end of the 3 years. If you've completed all these things before the end of the 3 years, and you've gotten to your date of completion, we say you've CCT'd, you've qualified as a GP trainee. Sorry for taking so much time. I think I'm running, but this is it. So as a word of conclusion, GP training can be rewarding for those involved in it, but you need to be very sure that it's really what you want. Don't just join the bandwagon. I would suggest, if you are in the UK and you're considering going into GP training, it will be proper for you to get a taster week, especially as an IMG. And like, I mean, proper taster week, not just come and shadow for 2 hours and go. Be there from when your the GP partner, or when the GP starts, till when he or she finishes. So you get an idea of what the workload is like, of what you are expected to do, so that you don't, when you are midway into training, you don't get disappointed and you want to switch. All right. So you're truly convinced that you're making an informed decision, and not because someone recommended, because there's good work-life balance, or that is a 3-year run-through program. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so comprehensive. It was really good talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Alebu. You can stop screen sharing now.
Okay.
Guys, just wanted to ask if you guys can just put in your questions that I can ask Dr. Alebu. She has kindly agreed to do this talk for us, even though she's got a night shift. She can see from her scrubs. Okay, so the first question I got asked is, so how much do you earn during your training in general practice as an ST1, 2, and 3?
ST1.
And then screen share. Bear with me just a second, guys. Let's restart it one more time. Bear with me just 1 second and I'll get it on. Okay. Yeah, got it up now. So that's recording, and Yeah, okay, you guys should see that now. Please, someone just message in the chat that they can see my introduction to radiology page. Yeah, amazing. All right, we can get started. Okay, so my name is Dr. Sumaya Gahan. I'm based in West Midlands, radiology registrar, as I've introduced myself. Just for those who are just joining us now, any questions, please put it through Slido. Put the link in the chat, as well as the participation code. I'm going to whiz through things. Main thing is high yield information in order to get you into radiology if you want to. Okay, so I'll be covering radiology application criteria, entrance examination, what is actually expected of you in terms of your portfolio, your person specification, a little bit about the radiology interview, selecting preferences, receiving offers, and what is the actual structure of radiology training. So it's all information that you do need to know. So this is just a Slido. I've already put the thing in the chat, so that's fine. We'll move on. So this is the Oriel website. So there's a little bit of overlap between what me and Dr. Elebu spoke about. So of course, number one thing is you need to make sure you've got an Oriel account. If you've got an Oriel account predating 2020, you still need to make a new account because the Oriel system has updated itself. It's a single portal that we all use for all of the specialities. You'll apply there, you'll get your interview there, and you'll get your offers there, okay? So it's a single access point for all specialities. And this is just how the interface looked like. I used the same screenshot as well last week, just so that you're a bit familiar about how it actually looks like. So in terms of one thing that I would advise you, again, it doesn't matter what specialty you're applying for, make sure you look at the medical specialty recruitment applicant handbook. I have added the link for this. So in terms of the applicant handbook, it's just very generic. It gives you all the information that you need to know that pertains to all specialities about actually how to apply. So it's really, really important for you to have a good look through that. So let's talk about eligibility for radiology. So you need to be fully registered and you need to have a license to practice from the GMC. And similar to GP, you need to have evidence of achieving your foundation competencies. So this can be either your current F1, F2, you have either completed your foundation program and you've got your FPCC, which is a form that you will have to attach to your Oriel application when you submit it in November. And alternative is that you've got a CREST form signed by a consultant. Oh, and another thing that I must add is specifically for radiology, you must not have more than 18 months of radiology experience, okay? This is excluding foundation program, because some people may have done like a 4-month block in radiology, very rare. I think there's only a very few posts that have that, but you can't have more than 18 months in total of radiology experience. So one thing that's really important is that you need to look at what are the specialty plans, recruitment plans. And again, this is on the internet. Okay, so I've included the link on a different slide for this. So ever since COVID happened, every speciality's recruitment process has drastically changed. So for example, with radiology, we used to have face-to-face interviews, okay? And for the past 2 cycles, there have not been any face-to-face interviews. Even the way that the whole shortlisting happens, everything has changed a little bit. So it's important that, yes, I'm giving you guys information that pertains to the 2022 cycle. It's important that you look at the information for the 2022-2023 cycle, just in case they go back to the original, which is where they will interview you face-to-face. Personally, I don't think so, just because of the convenience aspect, and I feel like this is the current trend that we are following. So what I've just put on the slide here is the shortlisting and the recruitment plan for radiology for the year 2022, which was exactly the same for the year 2021. So your MSRA, which, as Dr. Elebu already mentioned, is an exam, which is a multi-speciality recruitment exam that everyone has to take. What's different is, whereas with GP, you've got banding, with radiology is very, very straightforward. Essentially, everyone that's applying for radiology has to take the exam, and roughly the top 600 will get an interview invite automatically. So when people ask me, how well should I do in the radiology MSRA exam, which is exactly the same as everyone else's, really and truly is you need to make sure that you do your utmost best, because the cutoff will be determined by your peers and how hungry your peers are for it and how much they've worked for it. So the cutoff can fluctuate. It's literally just about how many people can we get through the door for the interview. And as soon as that room is full, the door will be closed, okay? So I really, really, really urge you to, if you're serious about radiology, put effort into your MSRA. You can have the best portfolio. You could have a PhD in radiology for all I care. If you do not have a good MSRA score, nobody will actually look at your portfolio and you will be kicked out of the process straight away by the computer. It will be an algorithm and you'll be cut. So don't put your portfolio to waste, okay? And I must really stress that. Once you've gone through the MSRA process and you've been invited to an interview, the next stage will then be they will verify your self-assessment score. And I will get back to that, okay? You will then have an interview, and following the interview will be 15 minutes in duration, very, very, very short interview. And the final selection score will be a combination of your MSRA, your verified score assessment, and interview. Just may I ask for anybody that's joining us late, please turn your cameras off and mute yourself. Okay, so next. So one thing that I must say is, as I mentioned, so the self-assessment score, what actually is your self-assessment score? When you are submitting your portfolio, when you are submitting your application through Oriel in November, you will be asked to give yourself a score, okay, for your portfolio. And we will go through what the portfolio scoring system actually is. Again, I'm going to stress, this can change. And it can change drastically. You've seen with core surgical training how much they've changed their portfolio marking even across one cycle, okay? But what I'm hoping is by looking at what the scoring system is for 21 and 22, that you can have a clearer idea of what the themes are that radiology look for. You give yourself a score. Then afterwards, as I mentioned, you'll be invited automatically to sit the MSRA. So everybody that submits a radiology application will be invited to sit the MSRA. Your interview invite will be completely based on your MSRA. Your final score will be MSRA plus your verified interview score, okay? And how your verified portfolio score and your interview score. Then you will be told, yes, you're appointable, or no, you're not appointable. And what they mean by appointable is that there is a space for you somewhere in the UK. So you've done good enough to be able to be selected for a national training number, but the geography is unknown at this point, and then you'll be matched to a program thereafter, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Now, I've just added in an excerpt that is from Oriel. I'm not going to go, it literally exactly summarizing what I've mentioned before, but you can read it in your own time. We move on to the MSRA. So I'm going to be very, very quick about MSRA just because I know that Dr. Leb already went through it. It's a computer-based exam. You take it at the Pearson View Center. Some people can take it online. It is designed to test you at foundation level competence, okay? So don't worry about thinking, oh gosh, like I don't know any ops and gynae, or I don't know any peds or psych. You are still, it's very much like finals, foundation level competence. The exam is divided into two papers. One is your professional dilemmas, or SJT, and the other one is clinical problem solving. Now, each paper was important for you to be aware of. Each paper is worth 50% of the final score, okay? So you've got your professional dilemmas will give you 50% weighting of your final score, and the clinical paper, which is 50% weighting of the final score. For radiology specifically, they care about the total score. So the cutoff is based on the total score. So let's say you may have a bit of your strong suit is clinical paper, and you do a little bit worse in your professional dilemma, it will balance itself out. So the next couple of slides is just about what the actual paper looks like. I've given a bit of advice. I'm not going to go through that right now in the interest of time. Just wanted to highlight competition ratios. This is data coming from the year 2021. Anyway, for anybody that's on Reddit, Junior Doctors Reddit, you'll see that radiology, for whatever reason, has become very popular. So for clinical radiology, we had about 1,677 applicants. and the post availability was 358, and the competition ratio is 4.68. Now, this is just for your general knowledge to be aware that it's a competitive speciality. However, please note that people do apply for multiple specialities, okay? So this data is not separated out by those who've only applied for one speciality. The next thing that I just wanted to highlight to you guys is what is the fill rate for radiology, meaning how many of the positions in radiology are filled by candidates. So again, if I just draw your eyes to it, you can see here 100%, 99.6%, 99.6%. So that's from 2019 to 2021. And I'm pretty sure that the last cycle as well was probably going to be 100%. So people really want the spaces and you can get ahead. Next, I want to talk to you guys about is person specification. So what is a person specification? So it's a set of guidelines agreed nationally with the Royal Colleges, and it's literally a map that explains to you what they are looking for, okay? What are they looking for in terms of attributes, in terms of your skill set, and in terms of your experience. And I would really, really urge you for radiology, make sure you look at the person specification. I used the person specification when I was applying. I used it when I was preparing for my interview as well. And it was so helpful, truly, truly helpful. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the person specification for radiology, and I'm just going to point you guys to certain things to look out for. So it's separated into, for example, the academic skills. So you can see here, they've bolded out research and audit skills. So it gives you a clue. Radiology cares about the fact that you've done audits, okay? So and the audit does not have to be radiology specific. I used, in terms of my portfolio, I did a closed loop audit in stroke and glycemic management. I had the VTE one as well. So I had non-radiology audits. It doesn't matter, so long as you've got transferable skills. I did do a radiology audit, and I would definitely advise you guys to do a radiology audit. Now, how do you actually conduct a radiology audit in your department? Very straightforward. You can go to your local radiology department, and I'm telling you, people are friendly, even if they reject your scans when you're trying to get things vetted. But the radiology registrars truly are quite kind, and they are willing to help you and willing to get you involved in their audits. So I would advise you to do that, or contact a radiology consultant. Plan B, I would say, if that does not work for you, look around your department and work out, is there a particular audit that I can design with a radiology spin? So let's say you're on a stroke ward, and you could do a radiology audit based on CT heads, for instance, or like how many of the patients with query bleed actually had a CT head within a certain set amount of time. Plan C is if you literally type into Google, Royal College of Radiology audit templates, there are so many templates that have already been pre-designed for you that you can print out, copy, and do it, which is what I did. I literally did an audit like that just because I had to do a quick one that I wanted to do, and I used the RCR template for that. Now, another thing that I'm going to point to you is teaching. Clearly, in their person specification, they've clearly written, by the way, the first column that I'm pointing out are essential things that they want from you, and the next column are desirable. So if they've put in the essentials box, evidence of teaching experience, is point blank, you need to have teaching experience. And the teaching experience does not have to be something really elaborate. For example, have you got feedback from teaching that you've done for your fellow junior doctors or medical students? Have you designed a teaching program? Have you partaken in grand round in hospital? But the main important thing I must stress is whatever you are doing, make sure that you've got evidence for it. Okay, so because you will need that for radiology, you will have to give evidence for everything. So for every audit you've done, you need a certificate or a letter from your consultant. And for every teaching, you need to submit your feedback. So you collect it as you go along. It will make your life a lot easier. Now, if you go to the next, I'm not going to go through the desirable because you can read that in your own time. Now, personal skills, again, Personal skills, the reason why I'm going to point this out to you is it's so important that you look at these personal skills that are required for radiology when you are preparing for your interview. Because this is, again, what they're looking for. They want to know that you've got communication skills, that you're able to problem solve, that you've got empathy. How do you manage other team members? How do you work within a team? How organized are you? What kind of situational awareness do you have? How do you deal with pressures and managing uncertainty? So one of the things that I did when I was preparing for my interviews, I looked at all of the personal skills that are on this page, all of these that are in bold, and I worked out what evidence do I have? What experience do I have where I can sort of like back this up? And how can I demonstrate to the RCR or that are interviewing me that I fit the traits that are looking for? This is literally what your interview is going to be based on. So if you're expecting to go to a radiology interview and to spend 15 minutes being quizzed on, radiation protection or Hounsfield units, that is really not what your interview will be like. It's very much looking at attributes, personal skills, what experience you've got, and the experience can be medical and non-medical experience. And are you a good fit for radiology? I hope that made sense. So this last page, again, is in your personal specification. It's all about, it cut off at the top, but it's all about commitment to speciality. And one of the boxes, which we'll go through soon for your portfolio, is you need to demonstrate for radiology that you are committed to radiology. Radiology is a competitive speciality and it's a run-through speciality. So they want people to get into it and complete their training. There's a massive shortage of radiology consultants as well. So there's a strong emphasis to show that you're committed. And again, I get questions about how can I show that I'm committed? It's literally right there for you. So they've asked you to make sure that you've spent some time in a nuclear medicine / radiology department. So that means you have to have done a taster week, okay? And you need to have evidence that you've done a taster week. Ideally, also have a reflective piece about your taster week. They want to know that you've got an understanding of the structure of training for radiology, which is a question that you can get asked in the interview. Literally, they can ask you, so what do you understand about the training requirements of radiology? Reason being, it's a very academic specialty and it's super, super exam heavy. So they want to make sure that you are aware of that and you are aware of the different milestones in your training scheme as well. So, but yeah, so you can read through that, and this gives you again a clue of how you can demonstrate commitment to speciality, such as clinical professional development by attending radiology conferences. There is a bunch of free radiology teaching that you can find on Twitter as well, and you can get certificates. So let's talk about the portfolio. So a few ground rules before we just start moving on to the portfolio. Guys, unfortunately, I am going to have to run over time because I already can see it's 8 o'clock. But if you need to leave, please do feel free to leave. I don't want to hold you hostage, but I will continue on for those that are still here. So in terms of your portfolio requirement, well, I'm going to talk to you first just about some ground rules that are really important for you to be aware about. One is that your scores. So again, sorry, just to clarify, when you're submitting your application in November, which is the deadline for your portfolio, you are giving yourself a self-assessed score for your portfolio. And the rule is whatever score that you've given yourself in November, you cannot adjust this after you've submitted your Oriel application. So it's very important for you to be aware. Number two, you should not overclaim, because if you overclaim and you are found to be lying, okay, so you can get in trouble with that and you can be withdrawn from your application. Obviously, I'm not talking about if you're a bit confused or you think you deserve a certain point more than what you think you do. That's fine. It's more about like blatantly you've not done audits and then you're telling them you've done audits. Okay, so that's a blatant lie. Another thing that they emphasize, which shocked me when I was applying, is that by the point in November, you're only able to claim points for things that are completed achievements only, meaning that the audit needs to be done by then, that whatever teaching that you've done needs to be done by then, the tasting week needs to be completed by then. Okay, so that is really, really key, because people seem to think that you submit your application in November and you've got November, December, and January still to sort out your portfolio, which you don't. So the time you should be working on your portfolio is now until November, and every bit of your achievements needs to be completed by November. Number 4, multiple achievements in a single domain. So let's say in one particular domain, sorry, I should just say, so for radiology portfolio, they're divided into domains. So like, for example, box 1, which is all about teaching, box 2, which is all about research. So let's say you've got loads of teaching experience. What they really care about is which one of your achievements will give you the highest points, right? So it's not 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. It's all about what have you done that will give you automatically the highest score. Then another thing that they talked about is rule number 5, which is achievements in multiple domains. So let's say you've done one thing and you feel like, hey, this one thing that I've done actually gets me points in 2 different domains. That is allowed. Okay, there's only one exception, and I'm going to just have to read this out. So the exception is, under no circumstances can you claim in the presentation section for a presentation or a QI project that you've used for the QI box. So that's the only exception. And this will be on your Oriel application when it goes live, but I'm just trying to give you guys a bit of information ahead of time. And number 6, which is time limit. So the rule is any achievements or anything that you're using for your portfolio, you must have gotten it after you started your medical degree. So if you've done something amazing before you started med school, that does not count. So I hope that clarifies this. Everything that I've just said to you will be on your Oriel application, so don't worry too much. It's just that the only thing that I really wanted to stress is you need to have completed your achievements by November. And please mind, everything that I'm telling you can change. Okay, so this is a very, very heavy slide, and I'm not going to go through it thoroughly. It's mainly for you guys to see what the different domains are for the radiology portfolio. So the way it's divided into 5 domains, and each domain is, you can get a score which is 0, 1, or 2, 2 being the highest. The full portfolio is scored out of 10. Okay, so you then give yourself a score out of 10 based on these different requirements. Then if you will get a verified score, which is, does the consultant who's looking at your portfolio agree with whatever points you've given yourself? And remember, you're going to have to upload your whole portfolio, not on Oriel, but on a different website. So I'm just going to briefly tell you what are the domains. So domain 1 is all about research into a career. And to get the top points, what they care about is, have you done a taster week, and what ways have you demonstrated commitment to speciality, which can be audit, attending or a QI project, or any presentation related to radiology, or have you, for example, gone to a radiology conference. So you can use that together to demonstrate your commitment. Number 2 is all about any exceptional undergraduate, additional degrees, and postgraduate medical qualifications. So that's where they care about, have you sat your part 1 if you're an F1 or an F2, or have you completed your full MRCP or your full MRCS if you've done it within 4 years? Have you got an intercalated degree, and where you've got essentially a first class? And lastly is, have you got any prizes or honors in 2 or more undergraduate subjects? These are all ORs, okay? So you don't need to get all of them in order to get the 2 points. But again, this is for you guys to read in your own time so that you can plan out how to look at for your portfolio. They can change. The main thing is, are you aware of what the themes are that they look for? And then the next 2 domains is, one is all about audits. So have you made a significant contribution to a postgraduate audit or a QI project, meaning that have you led it, or have you made recommendation for change? And what they really care about, which threw quite a few people off, is that you've completed more than 1 project in a year. So you need to have multiple audits and QI projects. In terms of teaching, they care about whether or not you've got a recognized postgraduate qualifications in teaching, or you've made a major contribution to a regional or a national teaching program, or whether or not you're the member of an academy of medical educators. So, I mean, again, one thing I'm going to stress here, when you're looking at your portfolio, you need to divide things into things that you can conquer in the time that you've got left, and things that you cannot. And do not cry about the things that you cannot. And I'll give you an example. So here, for example, the last one is asking you for 2 points. Have you completed a PhD or a 2-year MD? Or are you the first author in 2 or more peer-reviewed publications, or a co-author in a radiology medicine publication? There was no chance I was going to complete a PhD in the span of 3 months, and I did not have any publications either. But so I knew that I was never going to get the points in this particular box. So what you should then do is you should strengthen your application in other ways. So again, things that you can conquer, and things that you should just leave alone in the time that you've got left. Now, quickly about the interview for radiology. So the radiology interview was longer, of course, pre-pandemic, but for the last 2 cycles, it was just 15 minutes interview, which you may think is quite short, which it is, but it's really, really, really quite hard, because you've got 15 minutes to build a rapport with the interviewers, to then speak your mind and answer questions really succinctly. So I think with that reason, you need to practice a lot more. So I think I spent 2 weeks practicing for my interview. And one of those weeks I took annual leave. So I literally was spending all day practicing, and it was pretty for a 15-minute interview. So it's quite hard to be able to say things quite succinctly. But yeah, so the interview is divided into 4 parts. 5 parts, let's say. Commitment to speciality, how do you cope with pressure and managing uncertainty, team involvement, attributes and skills, and the final bit was any additional things that you want to say to support your application. As you can see, everything that I've mentioned is literally lifted from the person specification. So that should give you a clue of how you should approach your interview. Now, last couple of slides. So firstly, it's all about preferencing and offers. So with radiology, we are divided into different schemes, shall we say, and the different schemes are loosely correlated to the different counties that we've got in the UK. So for example, you've got a West Midlands program, you've got an East Midlands program, East of England program. So the ranking is a lot more simple when you're applying for radiology, because you're preferencing based on different regions of the country, rather than I'm going to rotate at this specific hospital. Certain programs, for example, West Midlands, divided their program into 4 quarters, just because it's such a big deanery. So think about where you want to go, okay? And then you'll be able to rank your things that way. One thing that I wanted to just stress that you may not know is that there's 2 styles of training in radiology. One is called academy style training, and the other one is called traditional style training. And you need to work out, firstly, the area that you're interested in, what style program do they have, and does that suit your style of learning? So when I was applying, I thought, academy does not really suit me. I think I should go for a traditional style. But now West Midlands actually turned into an academy, I think about a month ago, and it really does suit me. So you need to really think about what style of learning do you like. So what I mean by traditional is very much you are based in a hospital, in a radiology department, and you're learning by reporting, you're learning by sitting in with the consultants, and you're learning by actually being on the job. So when I started, I spent very much doing it like that, answering the phones, vetting, protocoling, reporting, making a lot of mistakes. So that's what traditional style is. Whereas academy is, so you spend a bit of time of your training in a completely separate destination, a completely separate building that's not attached to a hospital, and they train you and they invest in you. So you've literally got facilitators that are driving to the academy to teach you, and you tend to spend about 4 to 6 months at an academy, where it's literally it's exactly like going back to university. You're there with a bunch of people, you're all in the same boat, you're all learning together, and it's a very much that kind of environment. And then you get sent to the hospital to put to practice the things that you've learned. So that's the difference really between academy and traditional. And then lastly, it's all about the structure of training. It's important that you are very, very, very clear about what the structure of training is if you're applying for radiology, because it is a very nice interview question to ask you. So as I mentioned, it's a run-through training program. You start in SD1 and you go straight through to ST5. The beauty of it is you don't have to apply again. So I knew when I got into the West Midlands, which is where I'm from, that I will not leave the West Midlands until I'm a consultant, which I was really happy with. Now, the training is divided into core training and special interest training, which is all subspeciality training. What that means is, as an ST1, 2, and 3, everything that you're learning, everything that you're doing is all the same across the board, across the whole region, well, country, should I say. And the aim is to equip you with basic ultrasound skills, reporting skills, CT, MR, and just getting used to all the different flavors of radiology. You'll do rotations in gynecology, you'll do rotation in breast, you'll do rotation in GI, whilst also completing your FRCR. The FRCR is our membership exam, okay, so similar to like MRCP or MRCS, and it's divided into 3 parts. Well, what they call it, the first and the final, but really it's 3 parts. So the first FRCR, the exam is completely done. So one thing to include is when you sit the exam for FRCR is dictated by the Royal College, okay? So it's different from MRCS and MRCP, where you get to choose when you want to sit the exam. Whereas in radiology, you get given a date and a time of where to be, and you're expected to sit your exam then. And it's ARCP dependent, okay? So they may say to you, you must have passed it before you can progress to the next year. So it's a lot more like medical school, where there are certain goalposts and you're expected to hit them. So your first FRCR, you have to sit it in March of ST1, and the exam's anatomy and physics. Then you sit your final FRCR. So you sit the first one in ST3 and the second part of it in ST4, and then you're done. Then ST4, ST5 is all about special interest. So you become a general radiologist with an interest in GI. So you spend your 2 years getting your GI knowledge up to scratch. Now, if you do IR, the only difference is that ST1 to 3 is the exact same, but then ST4, 5, and 6 is specifically to IR. Okay, so you have to complete your FRCR just like the diagnostic radiologist, and then you will spend the last 3 years purely doing IR. Then another thing I must add is a lot of people tend to do fellowships as well. So once you've completed your ST1 to 5, you can do a fellowship. Like I know a lot of my senior registrars, they've gone to Canada to do their fellowships, or Australia to do their fellowship as well, which is an extra year to just get a bit more slick at whatever your subspeciality is. And that's it, guys. So the aim of the game is to get you guys from apply to offer. And I'm hoping that these series will be able to help you with that. Okay, so this is the QR code for those that joined us a bit late. Scan the QR code and we will do a Q&A session, and then we'll be able to go. I'm really sorry, we're like 15 minutes running behind schedule, but I'm going to stop screen sharing now.